In Iran, at least 8 people are dead after a fire at a prison that holds political prisoners.
Iran's government said that it started during a fight between inmates, but critics suspect it's tied to the nationwide anti-government protests. Ramy Inocencio has more.
Smoke billowed over Iran's infamous Evin prison from a massive fire that ripped through the facility holding political prisoners and dual nationals, including Americans. Gunshots echoed, projectiles were launched into the air. Just outside, anti-government protesters called for the death of Iran's supreme leader. There are conflicting narratives about how this fire started. State media claiming prisoners in this sewing workshop started a fight and a fire broke out, spreading to wards holding women and political prisoners.
When you hear about Evin, you think about torture, forced confession, and political dissidents.
Mahmoud Amri Moghadam is a human rights observer. He says officials could have instigated the violence.
What we have heard more from the prisoners and their families is that they have attacked one of the wards and they have thrown tear gas inside. There has been shooting inside the prison, beating.
Demonstrations have now been reported in more than 100 cities and towns, sparked by the death of a 22-year-old who died while in custody of Iran's morality police, allegedly for wearing an improper head covering. But toppling the regime is now the goal, and this time it's different.
People have lost their fear, and it's a very bad news for the Iranian regime.
The regime has survived more than 4 decades. And if the clerics were to be toppled?
I would say the countdown of the Islamic Republic has started.
And CBS News has learned that one Iranian-American citizen held in Evin prison is safe, but he's been moved to solitary confinement. His name is Emad Shargi, and he's nearly halfway through a 10-year sentence on charges of espionage. But, his family says he's a political hostage, a pawn, and they're calling on President Biden to push for his release.
So, question, the fire started in an area separate from where political prisoners are held. So why is there a belief that this has something to do with the ongoing protest?
Sure, good question. And, Henry, the alternate narrative to that is that officials actually say there is no connection to the protest. But you're right. From what we understand, the fire started in a ward that holds inmates convicted of financial crimes. That then spread to other wards that include women, and then to political prisoners. But, it's in the interest of both sides to really say what they're saying, right? If the fire and the protests at Evin are part of the broader demonstration since September 16th, a month ago, then it shows anti-government anger spreading even more, even to controlled facilities of the government. The government, for its part, of course, wants to distance itself from any links to the protests to project basically that they have the situation under control. Fact of the matter is we don't know for sure, but the director of human rights, Iran Human Rights, says the regime has a long history of lying.
So Iran's president is now blaming, of course, the United States for the chaos in his country. How should we interpret that?
Yeah, this can be interpreted as deflection, if you will, or victimization in an attempt to unify support for the government. President Ibrahim Raisi brought up a favorite attack line that we've heard before, calling the United States the quote-unquote great Satan. And he said the enemy's plot must be countered to resolve the people's problems. In effect, blaming Washington for the political, the religious, the social, the class, the economic issues, all of these hitting the country. The director of Iran Human Rights basically said Iran's clerics never take responsibility for anything bad that happens. The people have had enough. Really, this is a common move that we see out of many authoritarian regimes, right now out of Moscow and earlier out of Beijing.
All right, Ramy Inocencio for us. Ramy, thank you as always, my friend. Appreciate it.
You bet.